Howard is globally known as being the former president of Starbucks. When he and his team helped grow Starbucks from 15 stores or something around the Seattle area, when most people outside of Seattle didn't know Starbucks, to well over 15,000 stores around the globe. He's known for his passion for people and reminders that they were in the people business serving coffee, not the coffee business serving people. In 2018, he was recognized with a Lifetime Achievement Award by Seattle Business Magazine and celebrated for the way he loved people in the midst of business. So without further ado, I'm excited to invite my great friend and mentor, Howard Behar, back onto the podcast. Howard, so glad to have you back on.
Jason, this is a privilege and what a pleasure to be able to spend time with you.
Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. We're at well over 230 episodes now, which is hard to believe, but 230 episodes. And so welcome to all the new listeners that are out there and the way that this continues to grow and spread. And for everybody that's been a part of this from the very beginning, welcome. So glad this continues to add value and contribute to your life and your work. My promise to you, as always, is my hope with these conversations and the podcast episodes that we do is that it allows you some time and space to step back, to think about your own life, to think about the culture that you are trying to create with the people around you, to think about the temperature that you're trying to set in your life and your work. And the hope is that these topics that we're talking about on here breathe a little good oxygen into you so that you can serve other people and continue to make your organization the best that you possibly can in our world. So if you'll do me the quick favor, of course, before we dive into today's topic, if you'll rate the podcast 5 stars, leave an authentic review in your own words, share things with other people. That's the way that all these messages get amplified and shared. And so I appreciate everybody who does that, takes the time to do that. I'm very excited to invite my guest into the chat in just a minute for today. I was, thinking back, and in 2009, I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, at the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership Conference when I met someone that continues to be a tremendous person in my life. I was standing at a table outside of the ballroom where I was promoting and signing books and talking with conference goers about my very first book. It had just come out, Step Back from the Baggage Claim. It had just been released only months earlier. And Howard Behar had just keynoted the conference and came walking out of the ballroom and saw this sign for my book, Step Back from the Baggage Claim. And the way I remember it is he stopped and he smiled, and you could see that he immediately got kind of the concept right away. And that moment, and then moving forward, began a beautiful relationship in my life that has continued ever since. Howard is globally known as being the former president of Starbucks. When he and his team helped grow Starbucks from 15 stores or something around the Seattle area, when most people outside of Seattle didn't know Starbucks, to well over 15,000 stores around the globe. He's known for his passion for people and reminders that they were in the people business serving coffee, not the coffee business serving people. In 2018, he was recognized with a Lifetime Achievement Award by Seattle Business Magazine and celebrated for the way he loved people in the midst of business. Howard is known for the attributes of servant leadership in his career at Starbucks, but just as significantly and even more inspiring to me is how he shares that love with all people. So without further ado, I'm excited to invite my great friend and mentor, Howard Behar, back onto the podcast. Howard, so glad to have you back on.
Jason, this is a privilege and what a pleasure to be able to spend time with you. We don't get to spend enough. So doing a podcast is great.
Uh, hey, anytime I get to see you and just hear your voice, it makes me happy. And it was fun to kind of recall that first time. That's at least the way that I remember it way back in 2009 is I can still picture this table outside of the ballroom and people kind of hanging around it as I was talking to people and explaining this concept of my first book, where I had no idea what it was going to become or that anyone would care. And I still remember you coming right out of the ballroom after giving a keynote, and you came right over and you stood there looking at this sign about step back from the baggage claim, and you smiled and you immediately engaged with me, which began a beautiful relationship ever since. Is that how you remember it? Because that's how I remember it.
Absolutely. I love people, and I was kind of curious, and who hasn't thought about when you're in the damn baggage claim and there's people all around and it's crowded and the stuff and you're trying to figure out where your baggage is, if you just step back a moment, right? And so I that just hit me as who would think about that? And you did. And so anyway, so yeah, and that's how we met, I love it. It's been an incredible journey, knowing your family and your kids and watching it all happen and watch you change the world. It's a privilege.
Oh, it was so great. And those couple of days and, initially the fact that you even took the time and stood there and was talking to me and was interested in what I was doing was so cool. But then, as luck had it, they did a little book signing those couple of days, and if you remember, somehow randomly we were placed right next to each other. You were signing your book, I was signing mine, and just by luck, we got to engage again, and then we said, hey, let's meet up, a little bit later in the conference and talk a little bit more, and we did. And then, again, what that led to was let's keep in touch, and now the fact that I've gotten to visit with you in Seattle and Anacortes, and you've been to my home and been here, in Columbus, Ohio, and these kind of calls have just been so important to my life. So always great to be with you, buddy.
Thanks.
So let's talk about some stuff because, man, we are in a world right now where things are quite divisive. Certainly, we're coming back up on another political season where political uncertainty, there's been economic uncertainty. We know we have, wars and division around the world and oftentimes so much negativity and just divisiveness. And yet, we are people and you are someone for your career that you were always talking about servant leadership and loving people. And so I'm wondering, where does all of that intersect with us right now in the world that we're living in? What can we as leaders and as people do in the midst of this such a divisive world that we seem to be living in?
Yeah, it's so true. We're having a real difficult time communicating with each other effectively. And it's one of the issues is our leadership isn't communicating effectively. Our political system isn't communicating effectively, and it bleeds on through, and starts at the top and flows right on down. And so, I think that it's hard. I was talking to my daughter yesterday, who is 50 years old, and she's struggling with the whole Israeli war. And I mean, she's very emotional and about it. And I said, honey, you can have all these feelings, but you have to focus on what you can do. So what you can do is you have two wonderful daughters. You can help them get through it by loving them and by talking with them and listening to them. And I think right now, we've got to turn off our mouth and turn on our ears a little bit more and to listen to other people and to what's going on and what they're feeling and stuff. And, it's affecting companies. I know that it's affecting Starbucks and some turmoil with inside of Starbucks, and even the war has affected Starbucks. People start to blame Starbucks for things that didn't have any control over. And so Starbucks is trying to figure out how they get through that. And It's hard. It's really difficult because people don't want to listen. They want to judge right now. And they don't want to have any empathy. And so I think that we just have to open up our ears right now more than we ever have. And that requires putting our own stuff away. You don't have to advocate totally yourself. Wouldn't ask for that. I don't think any servant leader would, but you do have to allow other voices to get through so that you can understand where they're coming from. And that tree is one of the bedrocks of servant leadership. It's finding out where other people are, listening to them, and helping them, and not being so focused on self. And that right now is one of the things we're facing. So how we get through this, I don't know, Jason. I wish I knew. I'm really concerned because there's so much tension in the air. It's everywhere you go, and so it's leaders have to lead now, and lead with having empathy for others, showing it, practicing it, doing the things that we know are the right things to do, whether there's tension or not. It's the same things that make a family work. When your kids are struggling with something, you got to be able to listen to them, not just give them solutions, but actually listen to them. When your significant other, your spouse, is struggling with something, they don't want your answers, right? They want you to listen to them. And so now is the time to open up the ears and turn on that listening mechanism really up. Just crank that thing up so you're truly hearing what other people are saying. You don't have to agree with everything, but truly hearing and acknowledge their feelings.
Yeah, no, that's I think very well said, and I think we live in this time where everyone is so quick to be understood, but people aren't willing to try to understand.
Yes,
and so this posture of whether it's online, of this, everybody is a critic, everybody has an idea about the better way we ought to be doing something, or what's wrong with this person or this group, and it's all this finger pointing, and it's people showing up to the conversation that isn't even really a conversation, but it's only being what I'm there to be understood rather than to seek to understand, and this listening posture that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. The guy that runs Microsoft, Microsoft went through a ton of turmoil.
Yeah.
And had lots of conflict, highly competitive environment, and went kind of downhill for 15 years. And he was part of the leadership team, but not the senior guy. He becomes the CEO of the company, and he totally changes the company around. And you know how he does it? He said the single most important skill any leader must have is empathy. And that's what he brought back. He brought to the company was empathy, which means you listen.
That's right. You can't possibly have empathy without listening and trying to understand, and really taking that posture of trying to understand how somebody's experiencing something, or what they're feeling, what they're thinking, without asking and listening.
So, we may not, I was saying to my daughter, look, you are not going to change the world, at least at this point in your life, I don't think, but you can change your world. So you've got to focus on that part of it and what you can do to make it better place in your world. And that bleeds out. When we see other role models doing things the right way and acknowledging others and having empathy for others, then maybe it'll encourage more people to do the same thing. But if you're yelling at each other, it just encourages people to yell back.
But let's take a break. Let's pause for a second, and we'll be right back. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference, or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Yeah. Well, I think the image of and the advice that you gave your daughter, it actually what it stirs up in me is what we were just talking about before we hit the record button on here is, I was talking about the event that I spoke at down in Orlando, where we're looking at fatalities on roadways in Florida, and this massive challenge and problem, and it's complex, and there's no one solution to it. And yet somebody returned to the famous starfish story, which everybody's heard the starfish story, or so they're watching somebody walk down the beach and there's thousands of starfish that have come up on the shore, and watching this older gentleman walk down the beach and slowly pick up one and throw it back. And then somebody asks him, like, what are you doing? How, you can't possibly throw all these starfish back. Like, you can't possibly make a difference. And of course, famously, as everyone knows, the guy picks up another one, throws it back and says, well, it made a difference to that one.
Yeah.
And that, what I'm hearing in your advice to your daughter is, you may not change the world in one fell swoop, and or to think that any of us can do that is maybe crazy, but to say, can I make a difference to that one and the people within my sphere of influence?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And so that's what we have to focus on. It's like I always say, I pick up pieces of paper off the street, when I go for walks every day, no matter where I am. And particularly if I see a Starbucks cup, I pick up, sure. But I pick up a piece of paper and I throw them in that garbage can. Well, there's an endless supply of inventory. I'm not going to be able to clean the streets of Seattle out of every piece of scrap paper or garbage on the street. But can you imagine if we all did it? But I can do my share.
Yeah.
And of course, me bending over and some people, saying, what's he doing? Thinking I'm picking up a dollar bill or something, but I'm just picking up garbage and just trying to clean my area.
No doubt. And that's, you and I, you've come to my Thermostat Cultures Live event a number of times here in Columbus. And that, the idea of the fact that all we can control is the temperature that we set.
Yeah.
And so by the picking up of the trash, or by the, hey, what difference can I make to my daughters, or what in an organizational setting, to say, what is it that's within our control of the type of organization that we're going to have?
Yes.
And how we choose to care for our people. And do we want to be a culture that is different than what people experience in other parts of their life? I don't know if you saw this statistic, but Gallup just came out with it not too long ago that said only 23% of employees right now trust their leadership in their organizations.
I was all the way.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's incredible, and but what again? You and I are both optimistic, dreamer folks. But what it makes me think about is, man, your organization and how we have the opportunity to be massively culture differentiators. We can be so different in the culture by being leaders that build trust and create companies where people actually trust the future of where their organization's trying to go.
Yeah, we can do that. And when you do that, you know, you're going to be one of the very few that does that. And if you're worried about the competition, that's a way to be different than the competition. You know, love your people, serve your people, build trust, have authenticity. You know, the real. You know, be a vulnerable leader. Help your people achieve their own personal goals. Help them grow as human beings. Help them grow as professionals. You know, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you have what you talk about and what you teach people to do.
Yeah, and I think it begins, of course, with clarity as a leader, and then clarity as a company. I think back to many of the stories you've told me about when Starbucks was just beginning and growing, and the clarity that you all continue to come back to is, well, what is the type of organization we want to have? And the listening campaigns you all would go on to listen and solicit feedback, but that intentionality around this is the type of organization we're trying to have, and you talking about we want to love our people, that intentionality then leads to, and I remember the story that you shared with me about Jim,
Oh yeah,
who came to you and Howard Schultz and sat down, you know, and revealed some significant information about his health. And
right.
yet, and I'm going to ask you if you quickly give us the quick version of that, if you would, but that kind of moment and the way that you described Howard Schultz's reaction and your reaction in that moment of not a blink of the eye of what we need to do here was not just by accident. That was
No.
because of intentionality well before that point of the type of leaders and type of organization you were hoping to be. Would you
Yeah.
share that story real quick?
Sure. Jim was a store manager for us in Seattle, and he wanted to come visit Howard Schultz. I had just joined the company about 3 months before. And so, me being, you know, I was saying, well, maybe I can deal with this for Howard. And Jim said, no, I need to see Howard too. And so I scheduled the meeting, and Jim shows up, and we go back into Howard's office, and we sit down. And Jim and I are sitting in this little love seat, and Howard's on the phone. He says, 1 minute. And he get off the phone. He says, Jim, how you doing? I came around, gave him a hug, and we started talking. And I'm a kind of an A-type personality, so I said, "So Jim, what can we do for you?" And you know, I was kind of sorry I asked, and Jim said, "Well, I need to tell you both that I have AIDS and I'm dying." Now, this is early on in AIDS, and none of us knew what it was really about, you know. And Howard said, "Well, Jim, what can we do? How do we help you?" And Jim says, "Well, I need to work as long as I can work, you know, so I can support myself." And without blinking an eye, Howard said, "Absolutely." Now, remember, we're in the food and beverage business, and here somebody had AIDS, and we didn't know what was this, but Howard didn't even blink. He said, "We'll keep you employed as long as you're alive." And then Howard said to him, he said, "How about your health care? What are you going to do when you're not working anymore?" And Jim said, "Well, there's a lot of hospice organizations now that can help with that." And Howard just said, "Absolutely not. We'll pay your health care and supply your health care as long as you're alive." And, you know, here I am 3 months of the company. What kind of message do you think that sent to me or sent to the rest of the company? You could do anything to help another human being. And so be it. We did that. And I always said that's a care like you really mean it. Care when it costs you time, care when it costs you money, care when it costs some emotion, you know, care when you really got to give something of yourself, of your organization. And that's what we did. And that's what we've always tried to do at Starbucks. And, you know, that sets the tone.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't a business decision. It wasn't, well, if we do this, we're going to get credit and people are going to love us. It was, we do this because we love Jim and he's a human being and he's deserving of our caring.
And I would say, and that's again about the temperature that you were trying to set. That you, again, we're in the people business serving coffee, not the coffee business serving people. And the clarity and intentionality, then when something like that arises, it's not, oh wait, hold on, but what's the impact on the business going to be? It's what's the impact on the people, and the people are our business, and that's the type of organization we want to be. That's the type of humans we want to be in the world.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that nuance is different though. But that clarity comes from that intentionality and then again saying, okay, well, let's continue to show up and say, what would it mean to care like we really mean it?
Yeah, exactly. And then anytime something happens or something is going on, that's how you show up. And then all of a sudden people in the organization says, that's how we show up. Right.
That's how we do it here.
That's how we do it here. And then new people join the organization and they see examples of it. And unfortunately, they see examples of the other side too, because Starbucks is not a perfect place and they're not perfect people. But for the most, all the so-called reward and recognition structure was around showing up about serving people.
Yep.
Everything. It was hard to get fired at Starbucks for missing your numbers. But if you messed with the people, it was an easy way out the door.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that it wasn't, it doesn't mean we were perfect. Doesn't mean the organization was perfect. Doesn't mean, because no organization, as I say all the time, no, I'm yet to meet, a perfect organization because I'm yet to meet a perfect person. None of us are. And so people make mistakes, but yet, again, okay, for what we value here as a part of this organization, you make mistakes on the business, okay, we'll figure it out. But if you make consistent mistakes with people, then that's not the type of culture that we're going to have.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other sayings that you had that I return to so often in my own mind and thinking about it, and it's always such a great example too when I hear teams and leaders and organizations trying to empower their people, because again, connected to that same statistic that only 23% of employees now feel that they trust the leadership and that they trust the future of their organization. The same connected to the same thing was only 20% of people say they feel connected to the organizational culture. And yet 90% of the people say, that's what I want. I want to be engaged. I want to feel like I matter and I make a difference. And one of the ways in which you all not only engaged with people and showed people you cared about them, like you just explained, but you also empowered people to, hey, I want you to own your job and you help us figure out how to do it in the best ways. And so you used to talk about he who sweeps the floor gets to choose the broom. And what did that mean? And what does that mean for kind of empowering somebody on your team to kind of take something and run with it?
Well, we all people that are leaders and are hiring other people or working with other people, we all know the story about we hand out the handbook, and the handbook has all the rules and regulations of all the things you're not supposed to do in the organization. And if you do these things, you might be out the door. Well, I always believe that was not the first thing you wanted to give somebody. The first thing you wanted to give somebody is, first of all, welcoming into the organization and talk about the greater purpose of the organization, why we're all here, what we're trying to do. And then let's just use that example of the person who sweeps the floor should choose the room. So you're hiring a Joe to come in and clean floors. Well, Joe comes in and you talk about the importance of clean floors in our stores and why that is, and that our customers will come back and they enjoy their stay more than a dirty store. And so, Joe, your responsibility is to make sure we have really clean floors. And by the way, Joe, we have 5 brooms for you to choose from. We have a left-handed broom, we have a right-handed broom, we have a straw broom, we have a plastic broom, and we have a push broom. You can choose any one of those brooms you want to do your job. And I'd like to get together with you after you've started your job and let's talk about how it's going. Well, 2 weeks pass and Jim comes into your office and he's got a smile on his face and you can tell he's excited about something. And so, Joe, what's going on? Well, Howard, I was on the internet the other night, and I know you've given me 5 different brooms, and I chose the plastic broom, and it's done a pretty good job. But I was on the internet, and I saw a broom that I think could increase my floor sweeping productivity by 10 or 15%. You know how many bosses would look at him and say, Joe, just use the broom I gave you. Well, why did you hire Joe? Well, we hire people because they bring something to the party. And who would know more about what kind of broom to use than Joe, than the person who's doing the job? And so I always wanted to encourage people to use their heads and their hearts, right, to do their work. And if they had a better idea, let's try it. I only had 4 rules I operated by. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything immoral. Don't do anything unethical. And sure as heck, don't poison anybody. If you could live by those 4 rules inside of Starbucks, we could try anything. And so the way you encourage people to make change, to do a better job, is by letting them have control over their job. They know more than you do, so listen to them. That doesn't mean I'm not pleading for anarchy here. But I do say we can do a lot more listening, a lot more responding. And, the greatest example of that is Dina Campion, the woman who created Frappuccino for Starbucks, right? Sure, her broom was she recognized that customers were wanting a different product than we sold. And she kept pushing us to try to develop a product. And we ended up copying one from one of our competitors and renaming it and making it a little better. And it became Frappuccino, a $4 billion business, all because of Dina's broom. And we listened to Dina when she said, I want to do something different. And all too often, leaders just roll their eyes and say, just do what we tell you to do, and we'll be fine. And that's not how you grow an organization.
No, and it is a master class in this, but that, in servant leadership, we talk about flipping the pyramid upside down, where again, the leader isn't at the top of the pyramid. The leader is actually at the bottom of the pyramid, which means that the role of a leader is to listen and to coach and to care and to empower and to help bring people to the mission that to bring their gifts so that we can be more successful for the whole, right? That the person has something to contribute to the party that I don't have. And so, but yet so often leaders, when they aren't operating from a servant leadership mentality, are still thinking about it from that top of the pyramid perspective, which is what you're describing, which is I'm the boss. Just do what I told you to do. Get in line and do what I told you to do.
Don't bother me with the little stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happens so often. It's just hard to believe because many leaders are afraid to make a mistake, and they're worried if they give people room, somebody's going to make a mistake. Yeah, really? We all made mistakes, and we kind of forget where we came from, and that's how we learn. Certainly, somebody's going to choose the wrong broom once in a while. Absolutely, that's going to happen. And then you get in and you support them and you help them and say, okay, what could we learn from this, and what could we do different next time? And that's our job. That's our job.
That's our job. And as I guess, as I know we're almost at our time, and I could talk about this stuff with you forever and always love every time we get to connect. But back to, bringing it back full circle to the world that we're in. And how can we possibly make a difference in the world? And then when we start to bring our focus back to our sphere of influence, and we start to then focus on saying, okay, well, what is within my control and what's the temperature I want to set? And what would it mean for me to care like I really mean it?
Yeah,
exactly. And what would it mean for me to love people and to reorient my thinking to be more of a servant leader? And then how would I empower the people around me to bring their gifts to the party? All of those things are examples of where I think we do make a difference to that one. And then we make a difference to that organization, that group of humans, that then you are totally countercultural because you are way different than the 23% that trust their leadership and the direction of the organization.
Yeah. I've been retired for like 13 years. I still go into stores and I ask the same 3 questions. A barista, managers say, what do you like about Starbucks? What don't you like about Starbucks? What should we change about Starbucks? What would you change about Starbucks? And I get answers, and now I can't go, I can't go do something, but I can certainly when I hear something that I think is really pertinent, I can pass it on to Starbucks leadership, and then they have to make a decision about what to do. And the more people you ask, the better the solutions are, because it starts to. I always said Howard Schultz was the creative genius. I was the alchemist. I took all these disparate ideas, tried to put them together by asking so many questions, and it would form an answer. And then I would just go back and say, here's what I think you guys told me. Is this it? And then we would implement, and then we would do it. And that's basically I was listening to the floor sweepers, and they have all the solutions. They have all the answers. So before we get off, I want to make sure I do this. So for your listeners, I always like to give my cell phone number and my email address out for anybody that would like to call or talk. It's just a personal thing I like to do. And so my telephone number is 206-972-7776. And my email address is HB, my initials, Howard, HB, at howardbehar.com. I might be slow to get back to you, but I will always get back to you. So I enjoy meeting people and hearing about their lives, and that's all it's about.
And I can speak from personal experience that he's absolutely genuine and authentic with that. Again, from our first encounter back in 2009 to now, the calls, the support, the friendship, and the ways in which my life is enriched every time I get to spend any time and energy with Howard. So, Howard, you are a beautiful person, and I appreciate not just all the things that you get celebrated for what you did at Starbucks, but for the person that you were and that you are. And that's what people ultimately remember.
Well, Jason, you're my role model. Anybody that is fortunate enough to be able to work with you at any time is getting a real gift. Let me tell you, incredible guy.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you more than you know, and look forward to the next time we can not just talk, but either connect in Anacortes or Seattle or Palm Springs or Columbus or wherever, Cleveland, wherever we're going to cross paths next. We're gonna sit and break bread together, and I can't wait to do that next time we're together.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you got as much out of this conversation. Every time I hear and get to chat with Howard, I am filled with a renewed energy and focus about the type of leader that I'm hoping to be, the cultures that I'm hoping to be helpful in creating and supporting the temperature I want to set in my life and for the people around me. And then what is it going to mean to kind of breathe good oxygen into myself and into others so that we can continue to navigate our way through all the challenges we're facing. So hope you enjoyed today's conversation. And remember, the future of leadership and cultures is you, is me, is us. We have a chance to set the temperature that we want and then courageously bring others along the way. So step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.